Welcome to the Respectful Divorce Podcast. If you're considering divorce, it's important to know that you have options for how you divorce. On the Respectful Divorce Podcast, we explore those options and provide advice from divorce professionals. I'm your host, Tim Crouch, and today we're talking with members of Collaborative Divorce Illinois. Joining us today, Laura Baldwin, an attorney with STG Divorce Law in Chicago, Henry Kass, an attorney with Mirabella, Kincaid, Frederick, and Mirabella in Wheaton, Illinois, and Tania Harvey with the law office of Tania K. Harvey in Wheaton, Illinois. Thank you all for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
So, Laura, let's start with you. The first kind of question, divorce in Illinois. For someone who's going through a divorce in sort of the traditional way, what is that experience like?
That's a great question. It's different for everyone, which I would say is part of the issue going through a traditional divorce in Illinois. Typically, a person will call an attorney, hire them, and then that attorney will file a petition on their behalf, serve the other party, and things take off from there. And they can go in a variety of directions, depending on the attorney the spouse hires, depending on what judge is assigned. And that's where I tell people, you often start to lose elements of control slowly by slowly in a litigation case. There's the emotional reality of divorce. Of course, it's a very emotional process and something the person is going through. The attorney may or may not be well equipped to deal with that. There's the financial reality of it, which also in a litigation traditional setting can be extremely expensive, depending on how quickly parties can reach agreements and who the players are in a divorce case. So a traditional divorce case in Illinois, I would say 97% of cases still end up settling. They don't go to trial, but it's all the things that happen in between and the kind of the lack of control that the parties have when they're in a traditional litigation setting.
And how long can it take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say on average around 12 months, but depending on the county, it can be 12 to 18 months. We've had cases that have gone longer than 24 months, 36 months, and especially the cases that go to trial, those can take much longer. And it's not always over once the trial's over. It can take a long time to get a ruling from a judge. There can be appeals. And those unfortunate situations can take years and years to resolve.
Yeah, and Tania, part of what makes it drag out is that you don't have any control over the process, right?
Right, that's correct. Yes, for sure. And I think that's one of the things that people aspire to when they have a collaborative law case is that you have control over the process and you have control over the decisions that are being made. Everything is in your control, and you're not letting a person in a robe tell you what to do or what your parenting time should be or how you should act or what you should pay or what you can give up. So it's very much in control of your own case.
And Henry, that being in control has its advantages in what ways?
Well, a lot like what Tania was just saying. You're leaving your future, the destiny of your case, your financial future, your future with your children in your own hands, rather than as Tania just said correctly, in the control of a man or woman that's wearing the black robe and otherwise making the decisions. So this is why, as Laura said, most cases end up settling, and I agree with her. Somewhere between 95 and 99% of cases, I would say, as a general rule, typically settle, and that's because there's this threat of, hey, if we don't settle, what's going to happen is we're going to be placed in front of the judge at a trial, and then the judge is going to take that control out of our hands and make the decision for us, and that's a pretty significant fear that most people have, which is why at the 11th hour, a lot of times they'll end up settling, but that is typically in contested cases where they end up settling is at that very last, tick of the clock, so to speak.
And Laura, then I guess the the thing about collaborative divorce is that it's on your timetable. It's your decisions. So what are some of those advantages of the collaborative divorce process?
Yeah, there are many, including that you're the ones maintaining control over the process. We start the process. Every first team meeting is exploring both parties' goals and concerns, including goals relating to the process itself, how long they hope it takes, any important events coming up that they'd like it to be resolved before. And that's taken into account by all the professionals on the team, and we work with them to try to make that happen. By nature, a traditional litigation divorce is adversarial. So you're starting the case from a defensive position and an adversarial position, whereas in collaborative, we talk from the onset and the parties sign an agreement committing to this, that they're going to be solutions focused, that it's full transparency. They understand that the professionals are working together, even though they each have their own advocate. The professionals are on a team working together to help both of them and their family reach their goals.
Well, and Tania, one of the pieces here is that we've got 3 attorneys on the podcast today, but there's a team of professionals that are really helping the couple.
Right, that is true. And we have all worked together in some form or fashion in terms of either litigation or collaborative or even GAL work and PC work. So the good thing also is that in the collaborative divorce process is that we're lucky that we also know one another too, and we've had an opportunity to work with each other on cases and know how we work together. And so by bringing in other professionals such as mental health professionals, or sometimes it's called a coach, or a child specialist, or a financial neutral. Those teammates, as we said, a team, are there to help us. And, I always like to say it takes off a lot of hats that we as attorneys used to have to wear. The hat of figuring out parenting time, calculating support, balance sheets, dividing assets, figuring out everything. In litigation, that's what you do. You have to do it all. And when we have the team, we're putting people in their lane and saying, hey, this is your specialty. This is what you do. You take the lead and the reins on this, and have the parties work with one person specifically, such as the coach or the child specialist or financial neutral. And we're just giving someone else the lead to be able to lead the team in their specialty.
And Henry, when they're brought in, those skill sets really bring a lot more to the table than what attorneys simply aren't educated to do. When you've got a financial specialist or a mental health specialist, they're really well trained to help in divorce in some ways that for attorneys it's just tough.
Oh yeah, 100%, and it's on so many different levels. So if let's say, for example, we have a spouse who owns a business. We as attorneys are typically equipped to ourselves, and even if we were, it would be considered a conflict, but we're not equipped to go off and value that business. And even if we did, again, no one would accept the value from the other side. So what we do is we go off and we get our own expert. And then, of course, they're not going to like what our expert says in traditional litigation. So they go get their own expert. We spend all this money, tons of time in court, and then we have dueling experts. Here, if we have a situation like that, they're a part of the team. Like Tania was saying, they come in, they join us. They're a neutral party here, so they're not aligned with one side or the other, and they're giving their objective opinion about something and assessing the value. And then a large part of what's beneficial in collaborative is the communication. So both parties have, or both spouses rather, have access to that neutral and can ask questions. How did you come up with this value? And then the neutral can be more of a teacher in explaining things rather than an adversarial figure.
And Tania, their hourly rates are well below the hourly rates of the attorneys, right?
That is correct. That definitely is correct. And, when a mental health professional takes over and is trying to resolve emotional issues, we always have said in the past, you don't want to be paying your lawyer to be a therapist or to be trying to solve these problems when it's not even their specialty. So, yes, they are also saving money on duplicative work as well as hiring the expert to stay in their lane and do what they're trained to do.
Now, Laura, one of the things that I like about the role of the financial professional is that as part of that process, they're also creating sort of a financial roadmap for each part of the couple to see what their life's going to really look like after the divorce. And that doesn't happen in litigation, does it?
No, absolutely. And that's part of the goal-oriented approach of the whole process is we can look at things from a more holistic standpoint that we don't look at in divorce. So in a traditional divorce. So in a traditional divorce, you're just trying to get them through it. And once they're done, everyone can kind of wash their hands of it. But these individuals have a whole new life to live. They just went through a huge life transition. So part of the beautiful part of collaborative is the financial neutral can map out what their next 10, 20 years looks like, can help them work on budgeting, can help them. They're not financial advisors, but they can say, hey, if you get that asset and your spouse gets this asset, here's what that might look like. And then through the process, we can also help set people up with other professionals that maybe one of them does need a new financial advisor. And as a team, we can help set them up with that. And from the coach aspect, one of the things I love about that is, yes, attorneys can tell clients what typical parenting schedules look like and can maybe recite what a psychologist maybe would say, but we're not mental health professionals. We can't really give them that advice. But a coach can really help them, one, from the mental health aspect and understanding child development, but two, help them with what their future relationship looks like as co-parents, which is so important and something that is truly missing from litigation, because the reality is that people have to co-parent the rest of their lives, whether they're young children, teenagers, or adult children.
Yeah. And so, I think one of the great lines, Tania, about collaborative is that you're going to be parents after the divorce, no matter what. And it's not just till the children are grown. It's really for the rest of your lives. And you will interact with your ex in some ways.
Right. Yes, for sure. I think when we were predominantly litigators, it was easy to tell our clients, once they turn 18, you're done with them. And the reality is you are not. So it's important that we preserve the relationship even now, even if the relationship was horrible during the marriage, have some form of new relationship, because you will be dealing with each other for the rest of your lives. And it's not something you can escape.
Yeah. And this is one of the other reasons that I love collaborative so much, is because, it not only does it the majority of the time save people time in terms of the duration of the divorce and save people money, but they also save the emotional toll that it takes on them in a traditional litigation. And it helps to preserve that relationship so that they can work better together after the divorce. And that in turn also helps the children, because they're not feeling the same level of stress that they would be if their parents were going through a traditional divorce. They're not being subjected to the same things that they might be subjected in a traditional litigation, like contact with a guardian ad litem. And so it really saves not only time, money, but the emotional toll, not only for the parents, but also for the children.
Yeah, so, Henry, what attracted you to make collaborative part of your practice?
Common sense. I have a long history of litigation. Before doing family law decades ago, I used to be a state's attorney. So I prosecuted day in and day out. I was always in court every single day. And most days I was doing some sort of trial. And it's very exciting. Moving into family law, the trials are very different. They're more elongated. The litigation is much more protracted. It's much more in depth. But it definitely takes a toll, not just on the spouses, but on the attorneys themselves. I mean, it does. And the focus was on, okay, how can I win this by having this niche argument or finding this niche objection that they're not going to be able to overcome. And that's very exciting, but it takes a toll. And not just like I was saying before, emotionally, but also financially. With collaborative, it's so much more working together, and the focus isn't on how can I outsmart this person. The focus is on how can we work together and how can we find a creative solution to make everybody content with the outcome. And that's a challenge in and of itself, but it's, in my opinion, at this point in my career, it is much more rewarding, and it's much less of a toll, as I stated before, on the clients.
And sometimes a toll on the attorney too, right?
Absolutely. I'd much rather focus my energy on coming up with a creative solution that everybody can work with than spending the night at the office preparing for a trial the next day.
Tania, what attracted you to collaborative?
I like the team approach. Again, I think it's refreshing to take all the hats off that we used to wear during litigation and to, send it off to the other professionals. And that way you're focused on advocating for your client and preserving the relationship that they have as co-parents. And you're not stuck in the weeds with, numbers and child support crunching and, figuring out tax exemptions. It's great to have that financial neutral there to be able to take on those tasks. So it just makes for a happier team too, and happier professionals.
And an agreement at the end that is owned by the clients themselves, right?
Right. They choose every step of the way. I mean, we're there to guide them and help them and lead them to where they need to go. But, the professionals are there to help them along the way, and we're not forcing them to do things that you would have to do in court.
Yeah. So, Laura, why collaborative for your practice?
Yeah. Two main reasons. One, like Henry said, sort of the toll of the litigation day in and day out. I was finding it so incredibly frustrating to be fighting my opposing attorney, then fighting the judge. Then half the time I felt like I was fighting my own client because I have all these other voices in my head and I couldn't actually work with the client the way that I wanted to. So one of the big reasons though was being able to work with like-minded attorneys who realized that this was not in the best interest of the clients, and it just wasn't efficient. But the second reason was I feel like I can actually be a lawyer doing collaborative. I feel like I can problem solve, I can be creative, I have more time to sit with my client and advise them and work on things that align with their goals. Whereas in litigation, you might spend 10 hours, like Henry said, at the office the night before. The client doesn't even know you're doing that. They just get a huge bill at the end.
That some of you know that my wife and co-host sometimes on the Respectful Divorce podcast is a collaborative attorney, and her story was that she had a trial and it was a custody issue, and that she won and felt terrible at the end because she said, "I didn't help that family."
Absolutely.
And that's what collaborative really does. Collaborative helps families in significant ways.
Yeah, you get all the tools in one box to work with rather than just one, and then you've got to make do. Like Tania has said about the neutrals, it's really, really imperative, and it's great to facilitating the communication, helping us with ideas that maybe the attorneys themselves didn't think about because this is their niche, and then educating the spouses so that they can make the best decisions themselves.
So you all are members of Collaborative Divorce Illinois. Tania, you're a past president of that group. What is Collaborative Divorce Illinois?
Well, so the focus of Collaborative Divorce of Illinois is that we're a group of professionals that are trained in the collaborative process, and that we're committed to continual education and continuing to learn more about the collaborative process and keeping ourselves up to date with the law, with mental health challenges and financial challenges. And by choosing a professional from CDI, you know that you're getting someone that's committed to the process and that this is something that they want to focus on and not something that they're dabbling in or saying that they're collaborative when they haven't really made the shift in their mindset that, hey, collaborative is a whole different practice, a whole way to handle your cases.
And so as an organization, Collaborative Divorce Illinois is participating in Divorce with Respect Week, which is March 1st through 8th. And people can sign up to get free consultations with some of your participating members. If someone was to do a consultation with you, how should they prepare and what should they expect? Laura?
Well, expectations, at least my consultations, probably similar for Tania and Henry, are about an hour. I meet people in person. I do it on the phone. I do it on Zoom, really whatever their preference is. I spend a lot of the consultation really just hearing their story. So I don't typically dive into all their financials or learn about every single account that they have. I want to hear their story. So I can tell emotionally where they're coming from and then help them strategize as to what the best approach is going to be to start the divorce process. So I focus a lot with them on what is your process actually going to look like? And then once you move forward, we can get into the weeds on the actual aspects of the divorce.
And anything to add to that, Tania or Henry?
No, I think it's important that they're invested in the process. And I think by talking to the potential clients or participants in the collaborative process, you want to see where their head is at too, because if they start speaking about revenge or getting, wanting someone to pay, that's just not what the alternative dispute resolution is for. And then eventually they find out in litigation, oh, I'm not getting that either. So I thought I would get revenge and punishment. And in the end, they're not. So the only one that is punished is the marital estate by spending so much money on trying to go to litigation.
Yeah, and I guess maybe as we wrap this up, one of the things that sometimes people think about the collaborative process is it's everybody sitting around the table singing Kumbaya. It's more than that. It's hard work, isn't it?
It's very hard work. And Tania and I had one challenging case. I've had several fairly high conflict collaborative cases. And I tell people most cases can be done collaboratively or at least a form of alternative dispute resolution. And sometimes the high conflict ones are best suited for that in the sense that they'll have a coach or they could have two coaches. The beauty of it is we can put together a team to help whatever the conflict is versus in litigation, the conflict is still there, but we don't have the right professionals in place to really deal with it.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Special thanks, Laura Baldwin, Henry Kass, and Tania Harvey, members of Collaborative Divorce Illinois. Thank you all for joining us today on the Respectful Divorce podcast. If people want to reach out to you or learn more about you, what's the best way to do that, Tania?
You could just go to my website. It's www.tkhfamilylaw.com. And you can reach out for a free consultation and learn more about the collaborative process on my website, too.
All right, Henry?
Yeah, same thing. Different website. Our website is www.mkfmlaw.com. Again, that's M like Mary, K, F like Frank, M like Mary, law.com. We have quite a few attorneys at our firm, but only two. One of them that practice collaborative. Otherwise, you can always find all of us here on the CDI website as well as collaborative professionals under the attorneys tab.
Laura, best way to reach you?
Yeah, and I typically suggest to people they type in it's collaborativedivorceillinois.org. Because if you just Google collaborative, a lot of random things pop up. So yes, either through the Collaborative Divorce website. My firm's website is www.stglawfirm.com. Or my email where you can reach out personally or set something up to get scheduled is Laura, Laura, at S as in Sam, T as in Tom, G as in girl, law.com.
All right, we will put all of that contact information in the show notes, including a link to the Collaborative Divorce Illinois website. Thank you for watching the Respectful Divorce podcast today. This reminder that Divorce with Respect Week is coming up March 1st through 8th. You can talk with divorce professionals, including attorneys, financial professionals, and divorce coaches for free simply by going to divorcewithrespectweek.com to find a professional near you. Divorce with Respect Week, March 1st through 8th, and that website, once again, divorcewithrespectweek.com. This is Tim Crouch for the Respectful Divorce Podcast, reminding you that collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knot.